Hey, this is Dave DeCamp from Antiwar.com. This is anti-war news for Monday, September 2nd, 2024. All right, the first story at the top of Antiwar.com today: Israelis strike to pressure the government on a hostage deal. So Israel's largest labor union, the Histadrut, has called for a general strike that will start Monday to pressure the government of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to reach a hostage and ceasefire deal with Hamas. The decision to hold a strike came after the Israeli military recovered the bodies of 6 Israeli hostages who were held in Gaza. So Arnon Bar David, the head of Histadrut, said, quote, "We must reach a deal. A deal is more important than anything else. We are getting body bags instead of a deal," end quote. So according to Axios, the strike will almost completely shut down the country. Many private sector companies announced that they would join the strike, and the Ben Gurion International Airport will shut down at 8 a.m. local time. So for now, I think their plan is to do a one-day strike on Monday, but it's possible that it will continue. And the news that 6 more Israeli captives were killed in Gaza sparked major protests demanding a deal with Hamas. There's reports that say hundreds of thousands of people were protesting on Sunday night. The Hostages and Missing Families Forum released a statement blaming Netanyahu for the deaths of these 6 Israeli hostages. The statement said, quote, "For 11 months, the Israeli government led by Netanyahu failed to do what a government is expected to do: return its sons and daughters home. A deal for the return of the abductees has been on the table for over 2 months. If it weren't for the thwarting of the deal, the excuses and the spins, the abductees whose deaths we learned of this morning would probably still be alive," end quote. So Netanyahu has been sabotaging the chances of a hostage deal by demanding Israeli control of the Gaza-Egypt border, known as the Philadelphia Corridor, a condition the Israeli military does not think is necessary. During a security cabinet meeting on Sunday night, Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant confronted Netanyahu about his demand. So Gallant said, quote, "Continuing to impose constraints such as the decision on the Philadelphia Corridor will result in us not meeting the goals of the war. The fact that we prioritize the Philadelphia Corridor at the cost of the lives of the hostages is a serious moral disgrace," end quote. So Netanyahu is not backing down on his demand, and he told Gallant that, quote, "After the terrible murder of our hostages, such a step will send a dangerous message to Hamas and will lead to more and more concessions that will endanger Israel's security," end quote. A few days before the hostage bodies were recovered, the Israeli Security Cabinet voted to back Netanyahu's demand to maintain control of the Philadelphia Corridor. So this was on Thursday that he got support from the Security Cabinet for this demand. And then at the meeting on Sunday, Ron Dermer, who's the Israeli Minister of Strategic Affairs, very close to Netanyahu, he said that it would be a grave mistake to change that decision that they made on Thursday. So we'll see if this pressure does anything to alter Netanyahu's plans here. All the statements that we have seen, one of the hostages whose bodies was recovered was an Israeli American. So there's all these statements from U.S. officials about his death, and none of them, made it sound like the U.S. was going to add any pressure to Netanyahu to reach a ceasefire deal. So we'll see if the internal domestic pressure does anything. If this labor strike really shuts down the country, maybe it could have some impact on him. All right, the next one here. Kamala Harris confirms no plans to end U.S. arms shipments to Israel. This article is from The Cradle, and it's based on an interview that Kamala Harris did this past Thursday. U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris said on August 29th that she would not change the U.S. policy of supplying weapons to Israel despite calls to limit or end the shipments from her progressive supporters. In her first interview since becoming the Democratic presidential nominee last week, so that's 2 weeks ago that she became the nominee, Harris told CNN, quote, "I'm unequivocal and unwavering in my commitment to Israel's defense and its ability to defend itself, and that's not going to change," end quote. Harris gave the interview accompanied by her running mate, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz. She justified the ongoing support for Israel's genocide of Palestinians in Gaza by rehashing false claims about October 7th, including that Hamas massacred 1,200 Israelis and systematically raped women. She said, quote, "But let's take a step back. October 7th, 1,200 people were massacred, many young people who were simply attending a music festival. Women were horribly raped," end quote. So no evidence of Hamas raping Israelis on October 7th has emerged, while reports have pointed to Israeli forces killing large numbers of Israelis using attack helicopters under the Hannibal Directive. We don't really know the scale of how many Israelis were killed by the Israeli military, but we certainly know that some of them were killed by the Israeli military. So this is Kamala Harris coming out very strong for supporting, continuing funding Israel, no matter what they do in Gaza or the West Bank. All right, so the next one here, 6 hostages, including 1 American, found dead in Gaza. So this article is from Kyle Anzalone, and it's about the hostages who were found dead. So it was 6 hostages, and the Israeli military is saying that they were shot dead by Hamas not long before the Israeli soldiers found them. I think we should always be skeptical of the Israeli military claims, but they're saying that the autopsies show they were shot in the head. And one of them was an American, Hirsch Goldberg, Poland. He was his parents spoke at the DNC, and when they were there, they called for a hostage deal and ceasefire deal with Hamas, because if that happened, he would have been freed and he would be alive. And so he moved to Israel when he was a boy. He was born in the U.S., moved to Israel when he was 7 years old. He served in the IDF. I think he was only 24 years old when he was captured by Hamas. So again, and Netanyahu's response to this, he's saying this shows Hamas doesn't want a deal, no deal. We're going to keep going. But again, we'll see if that domestic pressure does anything. All right, the next one here, Israel kills 47 more Palestinians in Gaza. Gaza's health ministry said Sunday that Israeli forces killed at least 47 Palestinians in Gaza in the previous 24 hours, bringing the recorded death toll to 40,738. The health ministry said, quote, "Israeli forces killed 47 people and injured 94 others in 3 massacres of families in the last 24 hours. Many people are still trapped under the rubble and on the roads as rescuers are unable to reach them," end quote. One of the strikes targeted a school in Gaza City that was sheltering displaced civilians. According to AFP, Gaza health officials said the strike targeted policemen and killed a total of 11 people. Gaza civil defense spokesman Mahmoud Basel said, quote, 11 people, including a woman and girl, were killed when an Israeli airstrike struck the Safad school in Gaza City, sheltering displaced people, end quote. So also on Sunday, an effort to vaccinate children for polio began in central Gaza. The drive will last 3 days in central Gaza before moving to the north and then the south. The World Health Organization said that Israel has agreed to pause military operations in those areas while the vaccines are being administered, but Israeli strikes were reported in central Gaza on Sunday, including one that hit a vehicle and killed 4 people. So, this goes to show that they have these, they said that they agreed to pauses, but it looks like even they might not even be upholding that, the limited pause. And it's not like it slowed things down. The fact that you had 47 people killed within, from Saturday into Sunday. So Nearly 11 months into Israel's genocidal war in Gaza, there's no end in sight to the violence. The U.S. continues to supply weapons for the slaughter and has ramped up arms shipments to Israel over the past month. And the true death toll is unclear since the health ministry's numbers don't include the 10,000 people who are missing and presumed dead under the rubble. And it's also unclear how many Palestinians have died due to indirect causes. So we have that estimate from a group of experts who wrote a letter that was published by The Lancet. They estimated that the total number of deaths in Gaza, including those killed by the Israeli military and indirect causes, could reach 186,000. They reached that number by using the death toll from the end of June, which was around 37,000. So if they made that estimate again, based on the way they did it, it would be over 200,000 at this point. All right, so the next one here, aid workers in Gaza killed in Israeli strike on Humanitarian Convoy. This article's from Middle East Eye. So this was on Friday that this news came out. An Israeli airstrike has hit a humanitarian aid convoy laden with medical supplies and fuel for an Emirati-run hospital in Rafah, killing several workers. Israeli forces claim the attack targeted armed assailants who were attempting to hijack the convoy, which was organized by the U.S. charity ANERA. I believe that's how you pronounce it, ANERA. ANERA. I never heard of them before, but they're an American charity. ANERA said that several employees of the transportation company it had worked with had been killed in the attack. All the fatalities were in the vehicle leading the convoy, which was the target of the attack. According to unconfirmed reports, 5 people were killed in the strike. ANERA reported that the convoy had been approved by Israeli authorities. In a statement, Israeli forces confirmed the authorization, but claimed that, so they're claiming that armed assailants took control of the vehicle and then they attacked them, but that seems, not to be the case. The military further claimed that it had contacted ANERA following the attack and that the organization had confirmed that they were safe. So they're just lying because they're saying that they spoke with the charity and the charity is saying something completely different. So just another attack on the aid deliveries in Gaza. And this was just a few days after they fired on a World Food Program vehicle. All right, I want to mention our sponsor for today, and that is the Expat Money Summit, which is taking place online from October 7th to the 11th. And this is being put on by Mikkel Thorpe. He's the host of the Expat Money Show and a highly sought-after expat consultant with over 2 decades of experience. I've done Mikkel's show. Last year we did it, and he's a big fan of Anti-War.com. And if you're an expat or if you're thinking about moving to another country, geopolitics, the state of the world is definitely something that you would be interested in. So there is a lot of foreign policy related stuff during this summit. But other things that you will learn is is why international diversification is a must, looking for those to preserve their liberty and wealth. Learn everything you need to know about crafting your perfect plan B, how to acquire a second passport, how to do it quickly. And then some of the headline speakers include Dr. Ron Paul, Doug Casey, Scott Horton, Tom Woods, Mark Faber, Tom Luongo. To reserve your free ticket, your complimentary ticket, head over to expatmoneysummit.com. That is expatmoneysummit.com. And you can also, if you want a VIP ticket, there's a link in the description where you could get $100 off for that. Or if you go to the website and get it through there, you put in the code anti-war for your discount. So expatmoneysummit.com, go check it out, go register. All right, so the next story here, food, water blocked as Israel lays siege to Jenin. This article is from Al Jazeera. The Israeli siege of the West Bank city of Jenin has left Palestinians with no food, water, or electricity, with medical charity Doctors Without Borders accusing Israeli forces of obstructing access to health facilities and targeting ambulances. Tahir al-Sadi, a resident of Jenin who managed to escape, told Al Jazeera, quote, All basic necessities, including bread inside the refugee camp, no longer exist, end quote. So another resident, Faiza Abu Jafar, who fled Jenin, said that the situation is very hard for the children who are trapped in the area, and that said that they're terrified of the destruction carried out by Israeli forces. The Israeli military brought in reinforcements on Sunday after demolishing shops and bulldozing streets, while preventing tens of thousands of Palestinian civilians from accessing humanitarian aid in a step described as a war crime. Israel has also been accused of war crimes during its ongoing military offensive in Gaza, and we have certainly seen plenty of evidence of war crimes in Gaza. According to the Jenin municipality, the Israeli army has bulldozed nearly 70% of the city's streets and 12.4 miles of its water and sewage network since it launched its raid on Wednesday, August 28th. As a result, 80% of the Jenin refugee camp, home to 20,000 people, is left without water access, the Jenin municipality said. So this is really a serious siege that's happening here in Jenin, and at least 24 Palestinians have been killed in a 5-day Israeli assault. And this is, I believe, that is just in Jenin. And, they launched major attacks in other parts of northern Gaza. So this is a really bad situation now, and just a sign that this situation in the West Bank keeps escalating and escalating. All right, so the next one here, 7 U.S. troops injured in raid against ISIS. So 7 U.S. troops were injured in a raid against a suspected ISIS hideout in western Iraq on August 29th. A Pentagon official said 5 U.S. soldiers were wounded in the raid, and the other 2 were hurt from falls during the operation. The official said that all personnel are in stable condition. U.S. Central Command said in a press release that 15 ISIS operatives were killed in the raid, which was conducted with Iraqi forces, and claimed no civilians were harmed. CENTCOM said the ISIS fighters were armed with numerous weapons and explosive suicide belts. An Iraqi military statement on the raid said the hideout was targeted by airstrikes, which was followed by an airborne operation. It said, quote, all hideouts, weapons, and logistical support were destroyed. Explosive belts were safely detonated, and important documents, identification papers, and communication devices were sieged. So earlier this year, you see the U.S. involved in this big raid against ISIS. Earlier this year, Iraqi Prime Minister Mohammed Shia al-Sudani called for an end to the U.S.-led anti-ISIS coalition in Iraq and said Iraqi forces could handle ISIS remnants on their own. Then on Sunday, just 2 days or 3 days after this raid, he met with Major General Kevin Leahy, who's the commander of the U.S.-led coalition, and he reiterated this position. He said, quote, the remnants of ISIS no longer pose a threat to the Iraqi state, as they have become isolated groups hiding in remote areas to avoid capture, end quote. So you have the U.S. involved in these attacks, in these raids, in these operations, and you have the Iraqi government that is, the U.S.'s partner, saying that we don't need you. You have 7 Americans get hurt as part of this operation, and again, you just have the people that they're fighting with and fighting for saying that they don't need them. And of course, we know the real reason why the U.S. stays in Iraq and Syria, and it's about Iran and keeping bases in those areas. So they have they want to keep Syria and its allies out of eastern Syria. That's a big part of it, and control the resources. And they want to keep Syria under this crippling economic blockade. And then in Iraq, it's also about pushing against Iran's influence in the country. And ISIS is just, the excuse for that, because all the other people that they're fighting, the Iraqi militias, the Syrian government, they would all take care of the ISIS remnants if the U.S. left. So the U.S. and Iraq entered talks on the future of the U.S. military presence, but the Biden administration has made clear that it has no intention of leaving. They said that they're not even talking about ending the U.S. military presence. They're saying they're just talking about changing the name of it, basically saying that they'll end the coalition mission and then switch to like a bilateral security partnership. All right, so the next one here, Russia to change nuclear doctrine in response to Western escalations. So this seems concerning. Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Sergei Ryabkov said Sunday that Moscow will change its nuclear doctrine in response to Western escalations related to the war in Ukraine. So Ryabkov said, quote, "As we have repeatedly said before, the work is in the advanced stage, and there is a clear intent to introduce a correction to the nuclear doctrine," end quote. Ryabkov said the doctrine would be updated based on, quote, "the examination and analysis of development of recent conflicts, including, of course, everything connected to our Western adversaries' escalation course in regards to the special military operation," end quote. Ryabkov said that it was too early to say when the doctrine would be updated, saying that he's not putting a time frame on it. The fact that Russia is saying that they're going to change their nuclear doctrine, which outlines when they would use nuclear weapons in response to Western escalations, that is a cause for concern. And you see Zelensky and all these neocons and hawks in the U.S. always downplaying the risk of escalation here, but this is a reminder that what we're dealing with here. We're dealing with a major nuclear power. Russia's nuclear doctrine was last updated in 2020. It allows for the use of nuclear weapons if Russia faces a nuclear attack or a conventional attack that threatens the existence of the Russian state. Ryabkov's comments come amid fighting in Russia's Kursk Oblast, an offensive Ukraine is carrying out with U.S. and NATO support. The U.S. is allowing Ukraine to use U.S.-provided armored vehicles, bombs, and missiles inside the Russian territory, marking a significant escalation in the proxy war. The U.S. is directly supporting an invasion of Russia. So again, I know I've been talking about this and saying this a whole bunch, but it just seems like this isn't getting the attention that it deserves, what an escalation this is. And it's something that was unimaginable just, a couple years ago, that the U.S. would be providing missiles and bombs and intelligence for an invasion and for strikes inside Russian territory. The U.S. claims that it was not involved in the planning of the Kursk invasion, but a Ukrainian soldier said last week that Western intelligence was crucial for carrying out the cross-border assault. All right, so the next one here, Chinese-Philippine vessels collide near Sabina Shoal. So Chinese and Philippine vessels collided near Sabina Shoal in the South China Sea on August 31st, marking at least the third collision between the two coast guards near the disputed reef in recent weeks. So Sabina Shoal is about 80 miles west of the Philippine island province of Palawan and is claimed by China, the Philippines, Vietnam, and Taiwan. The two sides traded blame for the collision like they usually do. The Chinese Coast Guard said that a Philippine vessel deliberately collided with a Chinese Coast Guard ship. The Philippines said that the Chinese ship intentionally rammed the Philippine vessel, the BRP Teresa Magbanua, 3 times, and I saw a video they put out, and it showed 3 separate collisions. Tensions have been high near Sabina Shoal since Manila anchored this ship in the area over claims that China was planning to build a permanent structure on the shoal to assert its claims. The Philippine Coast Guard said that it would not move the vessel despite the harassment and bullying activities being carried out by the Chinese Coast Guard. In response to the collision, the U.S. reaffirmed its commitment to defend the Philippines in the South China Sea. So this is why this is such a dangerous area of the world right now. This maritime dispute is because you have the U.S. pledging to directly intervene if this thing turns hot. The State Department said, quote, "The United States reaffirms that Article 4 of the 1951 United States-Philippines Mutual Defense Treaty extends to armed attacks on Philippine armed forces, public vessels, or aircraft, including those of its Coast Guard, anywhere in the South China Sea," end quote. So things are really heating up. I mean, they just recently were trying to solve things diplomatically, but it's just really ramped up again. All right, so the last story here, the UK uses anti-terrorism laws to arrest Palestine defenders. This article is from Brett Wilkins. At least a dozen police officers raided the home of British pro-Palestine activist and journalist Sarah Wilkinson on Thursday over content that she has posted online that allegedly ran afoul of the United Kingdom's anti-terrorism laws. Wilkinson's son, Jack Wilkinson, said, quote, "The police came to her house just before 7:30 a.m. There were 12 of them in total, some of them in plain clothes from the counterterrorism police. Her house is being raided and they have seized all her electronic devices," end quote. So police who later freed Wilkinson on bail did not disclose what content she posted that led to her arrest. Wilkinson has been a tireless critic of the UK government's support for Israel and has posted many images of the death and destruction in Gaza, where Israeli forces have killed and wounded more than 144 Palestinians. Israel is on trial for genocide at the International Court of Justice. So she, I've followed this woman on Twitter, I think as long as I've had a Twitter, and she just, I've never seen her post anything that would suggest she's a terrorist of any sort. I mean, this goes to show the crackdown in the UK. People just being arrested for what they're posting on social media. It's definitely scary, and this is something that could certainly start happening here in the U.S. All right, so that is it for the news for today. Please go check out our viewpoints, one from Jonathan Hoffman and Benjamin Giltner. The U.S. military's anti-Houthi campaign still isn't working. One from Matthew Petty. The military tried to hide evidence of a massacre. One from Jonathan Cook. UK Labour Party purges have mutated into the arrest of Palestine supporters. One from Mitchell Plitnick. Why Democrats refuse to allow a Palestinian speaker at the DNC. And our spotlight from Jeremy Scahill, how the U.S. enabled Netanyahu to sabotage a Gaza ceasefire. So please go check all of that out. I hope everyone had a good weekend. I had a good one. I attended the Ron Paul Institute conference. On Friday, I spoke at the Scholars Seminar. I got to speak to the students there and met a lot of them, spoke with a lot of them, personally, and it was a really great experience. And I got to hang out with a lot of cool people, met a decent amount of people that listen to this show, which is really cool. And they were all very nice. And, it's always good to hear that people like this show and listen to it every day. And I really enjoyed watching all the speakers on Sunday. Really good I saw John Mearsheimer speak. I got to talk to him. I saw the judge, Napolitano. He's a really great speaker. He spoke both at the student seminar and then at the main conference. And, of course, Ron Paul closed it out, and he gave a really great speech. At 89 years old, he's still doing it, flying into Washington, D.C., so it was really, really good experience. Those conferences, I would recommend that everybody goes if you can. They're always a really good time, and it's good to recharge the batteries, to go meet people in person who, care about this stuff and appreciate what I do. Certainly gives me the motivation to keep going. So everybody who I met there, it was great to meet you. So that is it for me. I will be back tomorrow with some more news. If you want to share this show, tell your friends about antiwar.com, like, comment, and subscribe. All that stuff really helps out. I'll be back tomorrow. Thanks for listening.